Thanks very much for joining me. These are unprecedented moments in modern American history, and we have got to respond in unprecedented ways and together. That is exactly what we're doing. Our grassroots political revolution is aggressively taking on Trump and the oligarchy, and we are making real progress. Over the last 8 weeks, I've been to 11 states: Nebraska, Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan, Nevada, Arizona, Colorado, California, Utah, Idaho, and Montana, held 17 rallies, and have spoken to over 250,000 people. Most of these rallies were held in districts that are represented by Republican members of Congress. Interestingly, many of the people who showed up at these rallies were independents or Republicans and not just Democrats. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez accompanied me at the most recent Fighting Oligarchy events, and she did a fantastic job. We are continuing to hit the road. This time I'll be going to Pennsylvania. On Thursday, I'll be doing a May Day celebration with Pennsylvania trade unionists in Philadelphia. On Friday, we'll be in Harrisburg for an evening event, and on Saturday morning, we'll be in Lehigh Valley. Congressman Chris Deluzio will be joining us for these events. If any of you live in these communities, please drop by. We would love to see you there. But it's not just about the rallies that we're focusing on. As important as they are, please understand that we are not just parachuting into communities and then walking away. We're doing much more than that. We are working hard to build a sustainable, progressive, grassroots infrastructure, mostly focusing now on marginal congressional districts that have Republican members of Congress. We have already hired local organizers in Nebraska, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Michigan, with more to come. These organizers are putting together grassroots coalitions with great success. They have already organized well-attended meetings where community members come together to discuss local concerns. Over 400 folks were out in Michigan last week, and over 300 attended a meeting in Wisconsin. They are also organizing door-to-door canvassing, setting up phone banks, and engaging in social media. Bottom line here, we are not going to let the Republican representatives who prefer to hide from their constituents escape their responsibilities. Short term, as many of you know, there's a so-called reconciliation bill coming before Congress in the not-too-distant future. This horrific Trump legislation would provide $1 trillion in tax breaks for the 1% while making massive cuts to Medicaid, nutrition, housing, and other programs that working families desperately need. This bill has got to be defeated, and our efforts are putting pressure on vulnerable Republicans to vote no. Longer term, we want to see Republicans in these districts defeated in 2026 and Democrats regaining control over the House. If we can accomplish that, we'll be taking a giant step forward in stopping Trump's destructive agenda. Further, as many of you may know, and this is long-term thinking, we've just issued a call for progressives throughout the country to run for office, from school board to city council to state legislature to the United States Congress. The response has been extraordinary. Over 5,000 people from virtually every state in the country have expressed an interest in getting involved politically. Some are interested in running as progressive Democrats, others as independents. We'll be doing a Zoom call with many of them this Wednesday evening in order to begin providing them with the guidance that new candidates often require. If you are interested in the possibility of running for office yourself, please go to berniesanders.com/run. That's berniesanders.com/run, and you can get information as to how you can proceed. Not surprisingly, The establishment has taken note of what we are doing. Republicans, including Trump and Musk, tried to downplay the size of our rallies. According to Musk, those who attended were mostly paid organizers. Really, not quite true. While members of the Democratic establishment have occasionally applauded our efforts on the road, a number of them and their corporate media friends are becoming increasingly nervous about the progress we're making. And you may have heard some of this recently in newspapers or radio or TV or in social media. These establishment figures are exclaiming that progressives shouldn't be taken too seriously, that we as progressives are too far left, we are extreme, we are out of touch with American society. None of these establishment critiques are new. I've heard them for a long, long time, but they are worth discussing. So let me take a minute to do that. According to these establishment politicians, analysts, media pundits, and wealthy campaign contributors, the future of the Democratic Party lies in moderation. We shouldn't be rocking the boat. We shouldn't be bringing forth bold ideas to address the crises facing working families. We shouldn't be talking about oligarchy, about one guy owning more wealth than the bottom 53% of American households. Can't talk about that. We shouldn't be talking about massive income and wealth inequality and the reality that the top 1% now owns more wealth than the bottom 90%. We shouldn't be talking about the unprecedented concentration of corporate ownership that exists and that a handful of large Wall Street firms are the major stockholders in virtually every large corporation in America. We shouldn't be talking about the need to grow the trade union movement so that workers can negotiate for decent wages and benefits. And let us never talk about a corrupt campaign finance system that allows billionaires in both parties to control the political and legislative process. Oh, and of course, we shouldn't be talking about corporate control over the media. According to these leaders of the Democratic establishment, the path forward, get ready for this, is to continue doing exactly what they have been doing for the last 10 years. In other words, tell the world how bad Donald Trump is while continuing to defend a rigged and corrupt economic and political system that makes the rich richer while working families fall further and further behind. Well, we disagree with that approach. Of course, we will continue to work with Democrats and anybody else to help lead the way in exposing Trump's pathological lying, his kleptocratic behavior, which enriches himself and his family, his disastrous economic policies, which benefit the rich at the expense of everyone else, his authoritarianism and his contempt for the Constitution, his foreign policy, which is alienating us from longtime friends and allies. We will continue to do that and more. But that is not enough. From one end of our country to the other, in red states, blue states, purple states, working families, young people, seniors, the poor, people of color, people in cities and people in rural America, and Americans of all stripes are desperately looking for a new and bold vision for America's future. The status quo is not working and cannot and should not be defended. Let me repeat that. The status quo is not working and cannot and should not be defended. Simply stated, in the richest country in the history of the world, where our productive capabilities are exploding with new technologies, every man, woman, and child in our country can and should have a decent standard of living. This is not radical utopian thinking. This is not far left. This is what we can and should be achieving. This is what we should be fighting for. What is radical and unthinkable is that in the year 2025, in the United States of America, 60% of our people live paycheck to paycheck. And we have some of the highest rates of childhood and senior poverty of any major country on earth. What is radical is that we have more income and wealth inequality than we've ever had before. And unbelievably, one man owns more wealth than the bottom 53% of households. What is radical is that we are the only major country not to guarantee health care for all as a human right or have paid family and medical leave. What is radical is that 800,000 of our fellow Americans are homeless and that over 20 million households spend over half of their limited incomes for housing. What is radical is that we are spending close to $1 trillion a year on the military and many billions in weaponry for an extremist Netanyahu government in Israel that has waged a horrific, illegal, and immoral war against the people of Gaza. What is radical is that our democracy is being undermined not just by Donald Trump, but by billionaire campaign contributors and a corrupt campaign finance system. The American people desperately want this country to move forward in a new direction, economically, politically, socially, and environmentally. Just as a matter of fact, a recent survey found that 3/4 of Americans believe the American political and economic system need major changes. So to our establishment friends in the Democratic Party, no, we will not maintain the status quo. We will not shrink from big ideas. We are prepared to take on the big money interests who dominate our society. And we know that the American people are with us in that fight. And we should be enormously proud that we are helping to shape that path. But let us be clear, the road forward will not be easy. We are taking on the oligarchs and their unlimited wealth. We're taking on corporate America and the media that they own. We're taking on Donald Trump and the Republican Party. And we're taking on the fossilized section of the Democratic Party, which cannot shake loose from their top-down politics, their wealthy campaign donors, and their super PACs. In this pivotal moment in American and world history, when the stakes are so high for our country and the entire planet, we should not underestimate the difficult challenges that we face. But that should not make us pessimistic. If we stand together, we have the power to create a government and an economy that works for all of us, not just a handful of billionaires. As Nelson Mandela, one of the great liberation leaders in modern history, reminded us, quote, "It always seems impossible until it is done," end quote. Let's do it. Thank you very much.